when you can see my screen so I can just go ahead with the training.
Okay, all right. Waiting for that.
Okay. All right, confirm you can see my
Yeah, your
screen
screen
now.
is live.
All right, so I'll just go ahead and present, go to presentation mode. Confirm you can see it in presentation mode now.
Not yet.
Okay, so I'm not even going to try to adjust that. I'll just go ahead to the presentation.
All right.
Okay, so today we're going to be
Actually make
talking
it more
about...
visible. Is it possible?
Okay, yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Awesome.
Is this better?
Yeah.
Great.
Thank
Okay, so today we're going to be talking very quickly about the green economy and how buildings impact in advancing the green economy agenda, right? Of course, you know, I'm a green building expert, and we see the building and the real estate sector as a major player in cutting down on the global GHG emissions. I'll just run through some facts. Please try and keep up the pace with me because I'm going to be flying because of my very limited time. So one very good fact I want us all to know today is that buildings have high environmental impacts, right? Where you live today has contributed one way or the other to global greenhouse gas emission, which is why, as circularity experts or sustainability experts, we try and look at identify opportunities to infuse resource efficiency measure into building designs and building operations, right? So that we can leverage on the opportunity to have to cut down on the global greenhouse gas emissions. So another fact is that the building industry contributes 35% as of 2023, right? Contributes 35% of the global GHG emissions. And then also in 2023, we know that 50% to 55% of the world's population live or habit in cities, right? We know, of course, that most of the economic activities thrive within the cities. You see a lot of structures being raised. You see 25-story buildings. In fact, if you go to the global north, where you have high-rise structures spanning over 100 floors, a lot of raw materials are being extracted on a daily basis to make those buildings functional, right? So, of course, we know the current world population is about 8.2 thereabouts billion, and over 50% of the world population is living in cities, hence the pressure and the consistent demand for building materials. There will always be need for shelter, right? That is one of our requirements as humans for survival. So please, apologies about the background noise. So this has brought us, giving us that understanding that to be able to exist as humans, we need shelter, and to provide, to acquire that shelter, right, and also maintain the quality and standard of living that we all desires, buildings need to extract, or building development need a lot, and a whole lot of natural resource, right? Buildings consume energy while in use. Buildings consume water while in use. Building has enormous GHG footprint. Okay, so with that being said, I'll dive right into the agenda of our conversation today. We're going to touch a bit on the green economy. I heard one of the previous speakers mention her learnings from the previous sessions about circular economy and green economy. So we're just going to touch very briefly on that. We're going to highlight the importance of sustainable construction, how sustainable construction can stimulate circularity, can stimulate circular economy, green economy, and also social equity, right? We'll also touch a bit about the principles of sustainable construction, or maybe if we have enough time, highlight a few business cases here and there across the globe, and then we'll focus on the strategies as sustainable experts, right? Strategies that we can adopt in implementing or advancing the circular economy agenda. So just to dive right into it, look at the image in front of you. You can see this is a typical city life. This is the expected standard for urbanized settlements. You see high-rise structures. You see a lot of literate and educated individuals going about their business. You have hotels, you have residencies, you have shopping outlets, you have most of the road networks properly constructed and tarred. And that's when the conversation around the heat wave, the whole conversation. I believe we know the whole conversation around the increasing heat wave in the environment due to road construction and transfer of heat and absorption of heat by the earth crust. But that's not the focus of the conversation today. This picture is just to demonstrate a typical urban center and how it is supposed to look like, right? It's supposed to be safe, we're supposed to enjoy healthy environment, limited air pollution, have cities or states that are very connected, right? Reducing the demand for mechanical means of travel. It should be a smart environment. It should be an environment that enhances productivity, economic productivity, social interactions, enhance the overall development of that economy or that environment. Another conversation is around equitability, sustainability, responsiveness, and resilience of the economic and the environmental environment. Okay, so we'll dive right into what the green economy is. Just to simply paraphrase, right? The green economy is an agenda that is looking at advancing economic growth, right, while reducing environmental degradation or environmental risk, right? The goal is not to completely eliminate financial sustainability. The goal is to advance the growth of the economy as alongside paying attention to the ecological impact of economic activities, right? Paying attention or now, shedding major light and accounting for the ecological impact or environmental impact of economic activities. That's simply what it is. And if you look at the diagram, I always like to use diagram because I know it's a very quick way to get knowledge. You'd see a circle that shows a design of a city that is, you can see the red circle. It shows low carbon growth. The city is advancing, but carbon emissions is definitely being reduced, plus resource efficiency and social inclusivity. This brings about sustainable development. This is a summary of what sustainable development should look like. So let me skip through my slide very quickly. Now, the green economy targets three critical areas or three critical crises facing the world today. I'll start with the last one, the ecological crisis. Of course, what is the environmental impact or the environmental costs of economic activities, right? So that's ecological crisis, air pollution, health implication, the destruction of existing ecosystems, deforestation, extinction, all of the ecological and environmental costs is one of the problems that the green economy is looking to solve, right? And then there, of course, the economic crisis, because as we are solving environmental issues, we are on the same hand solving ecological crisis. Job creation would is one major impact, right? There will be increased job creation, there will be equity, social equity, and equality. And that brings us to the conversation of social and political crisis. I'm going to run through my slides very, very quickly. Very, very quickly, you pardon me. So what are the components of the green economy? This table is inexhaustive, right? So, but I'll just focus this description focus on the building sector. So now in the building sector, we see opportunity through sustainable waste management, water management, clean transportation. Clean transportation typically means zero carbon transportation, renewable energy, sustainable extraction, production, and consumption. Then the implementation and advancement of green buildings, right? I will skip through this. I want to go straight to the impact of building constructions in the environment. Now, like I said earlier, the building sector or the construction industry contributes a minimum of 35% to the global greenhouse gas emission. And how does it do this? Look at the table beside this write-up. You see there are certain inputs or materials that contribute to these emissions or these for pollutions during the construction phase of a project to the operation and maintenance phase, renovation or demolition. Excuse me. Okay. Now, material extraction is one critical area. During the extraction of raw materials, we've identified, the researchers have identified that the building sector consumes 40% of global materials. That is, if you categorize the entire raw materials in the earth crust, to service the building sector alone, we need 40% of the global raw materials, right? And then during the construction and operation of buildings, right, they consume 35% of global energy. All of our activities, human activities, 75% of that happen within the office space, which is inside the building. If you go to a hotel, it's inside the building, right? You live inside the building. Recreation, most of the time in the cities, happen within buildings. So there's a high demand for energy use within buildings. That also applies to water use. This shows the total contribution of water, right? That the building needs. To service a building, you need to use the restroom, you need water for that. You need to use typically water to cook in the kitchen, to clean, maintain the level of cleanness in the building. Water is a major resource that is also consumed heavily within the building sector. All right, just to further break it down for our understanding, when we talked about 40% of materials being extracted that are being used by buildings, this is a breakdown of those materials that are used in the building sector. We have woods, we have steel, we have aggregates, right? Granite, we have glass, we have copper, we have concrete, we have bricks, we have aluminum. All of these materials are extracted on a daily basis and are heavily consumed in and through the building sector. Now, what are the outputs of the extraction activities, the use and development of buildings? What is the environmental impact? What's the environmental cost of that? Typically, every stage of the construction process has a level of GHG emission. Most individuals or experts sometimes think that it is when the building has been completed that it starts adversely or negatively impacting the environment. No, right from the extraction stage, of course, if you're going to look at your scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions and how you're tracking the emissions for every process or project, you see that right from the extraction stage, right, building development already begin to create a lot or produce a lot of GHG emissions. One of them is the CO2 emissions, right? During the process of construction, especially, and transportation of those construction materials, CO2 is heavily emitted, right? Methane emissions is also done during production of coal, natural gas in buildings, right? Nitrous oxide is also emitted in certain agricultural and industrial activities that goes on within the building at the operational phase. And then all our HFH gases, hydrofluorocarbons, right? All the fluorinated gases are also emitted, and we know, of course, causes heavily because of their global warming potential, causing global warming. Now, this is further broken down in this image, and there are different contributions across the different sectors. The transportation sector, you see, heavily dependent on CO2 emissions. For the oil and gas sector heavily produces or emits CO2. The agricultural sector heavily produces methane. Landfill cars heavily produce nitrous oxide that most of the times are accumulated on earth surface, affecting agricultural process. You see an accumulation of nitrous oxide in the food that we consume, right? PFCs, the HFCs, and other CO2s, sorry, excuse me, other GHG that are being emitted. So I would go straight through the different sectors or or areas, right? I'll say, okay, sectors of construction where we see high emissions taking place, right? Now, in the built environment, we have, of course, different types and uses of buildings. We have buildings that are developed for industrial use. We have transportation road networks that are built, the bus stops, the terminals, the airports, the bus stations, the railway stations. All of this transport infrastructures are constructed with the same building materials and typically the same process. Now we have other use like commercial use, retail. This table or this chart shows exactly the contribution of each of the different sectors of the built environment. I won't dwell so much on this because of our time. Now, previously I explained how carbon is introduced in the environment through the construction process, right? We have carbon emission at different stage, and we're going to highlight those different stages. Now, we mentioned earlier on sourcing or extraction of materials before materials are even processed, before your cement becomes cement for use or for construction. There is heavy production and processing that has happened, right? With limestone, converting it, a lot of energy has been expended to be able to convert limestone to usable cement that is then further processed or combined and used for construction. So a lot of emissions happen within that value chain. Now, when you are transporting your materials, the tiles that you use, the roofing sheets that you use, the iron rods that are being used, the finished materials that you use for your finishing, the paint, the glasses that are used. The list is endless. Just think of all the construction materials that are used in the environment today, right? In our economy today, all our modern building materials goes through heavy processing, and there is huge environmental impact that we have identified through those processes. Now, this is typical to the building environment, right? So transportation of the materials, the construction of the material is then the next stage. Right? During construction, there's limited emission because heavy emission has already been produced right from the sourcing and extraction stage. So construction is more like you are bringing together all of these materials at a particular location, and then your scope 2 emissions can then be calculated from that process. Now, during the use of the building, right, from the day the building is commissioned and say, oh yes, this is a recreational center, or this is a shopping mall that has newly been developed and we are launching it today. From the launch of that building, right, the building continues to emit or continues to produce a lot of GHG gases from its maintenance process, from its repair process, sometimes renovation if the building has lasted over 25 to 50 years. And then some buildings, after they've gotten to their end of life, are then being demolished, disassembled, and there's a lot of emissions that are produced. Now, we'll dive a bit deeper into how green buildings or the green building strategy has been positioned to cut down heavily on carbon emissions being emitted from the buildings or GHG gases being produced from the building sector, and how we have identified strategies, right, to integrate efficiency measure from the extraction phase to the construction phase and then to the use or operational phase. So the concept of green building is one key component that the building sector, or one key strategy that the building sector now leverages to introduce circularity and sustainability in the building sector. Now, what is a green building? If I'm going to put this question to the house, I always love to ask this question. I'm going to show you a picture very quickly, and you're going to tell me which of these buildings you categorize, or you think from your perception or from the little knowledge you have heard. Now, which of these buildings do you think can be categorized as a green building or falls under the green building category? Feel free to drop your comments in the chat, and then the facilitator would probably just read it out so that we can hear people's opinion. I'm waiting. Feel free to drop your comment. Is it building A? If you need me to expand a bit on it, I can go ahead and do that so that you can see clearly the different types of buildings. And yes, my facilitator, are you still with me?
Yeah, sure. So we have Veronica said C. We have Mujid E. Risha,
Veronica, why do you say C? Just give me one very quick reason. What do you see? What feature do you see that makes you consider C as a green building? Not that you are wrong, please. Not that you are wrong, but just give me a reason.
Veronica, you can kindly unmute your mic and just give us why you've selected C.
Any other person can go ahead. I just need one male, one female, and we'll
All right. So
continue.
Mujid, are you there? Mujid Yusuf, you selected E.
E, brilliant selection.
All right. If you are there, please kindly unmute yourself and just give us maybe 30 seconds snapshot of why you selected E. Okay, so we have Tomiwa from Lagos. Please kindly, okay, just raise up your hand. Now I can see Tomiwa. Awesome. Can you unmute your mic and tell us what you selected?
Okay.
Tomiwa, I can't hear you.
Okay, facilitator,
Okay,
just let
great,
me.
great,
Okay, go
great.
ahead.
Okay, I think yeah. I was trying to unmute before it wasn't working. It was saying the host disabled that.
Oh,
So
sorry about that.
I chose, so for me, there are a couple of buildings there that I think are green buildings. And I'm in my head thinking of green buildings. There are two things coming to my head. What are the kind of buildings that promotes growth of natural habitats, right? Plants, because this plant, they contribute to the ecosystem in terms of exchange of
Yeah.
carbon and all that. Then
Yes.
the other thing I'm looking for is how the energy is being managed in terms of what kind of, how is power being generated. And for the options I chose, um, in fact, I've been looking at it properly. I'm seeing that it's like some of there are even more buildings there that are green enabled anyway.
I
But for the
agree. I agree with you completely.
so the options I chose are E, A, and C, and it's because these options have elements of plants around them, and they are also using solar panels. So that is natural energy conversion, right? Solar energy, and then they are also having green, plants surrounding the building.
Surrounding them. I think that's
Thank
an
you.
excellent response. Thank you so much for that. I like the fact that you highlighted the existing ecosystem, buildings that do not tamper, right, with the integrity of the existing ecosystem is definitely a green building. Another key indicator that you mentioned is buildings that use renewable form of energy, some form of renewable energy to power itself, right? That's a major critical component, right, for selecting or identifying a green building. Thank you very much. We'll dive right into it. So just to provide a bit of clarity on this image, every single building here can be a green building. We cannot only physically assess a building and then categorize it under green or not green, right? You need to go beyond the physical aesthetics of the building and identify other critical features of the building and other critical components of the building that enables resource efficiency, that enables the existing ecosystem to thrive, right? That also supports the use of resource circularity, that also supports the use of material circularity. So we have a factor, one major factor that we assess, the embodied carbon in materials. Every building material has a level of embodied carbon, right? And we mentioned that earlier on, that at the production phase of construction materials, there is heavy emission happening at that stage. What that means is that before that material gets to your site, it has already its carbon footprint. The onus is on that sustainability manager to say, what is the carbon footprint attached to this construction material I'm using? And that's where the conversation around material selection comes into play. For buildings that want to be developed as green buildings, or buildings that desire to transition to green, they look at the material contribution to their building, and that's the embodied carbon within the material. So I'll go back to my slides very quickly because of our time. Okay, we've touched on this. So then what is a green building, right? There are critical metrics that we measure, right? There are critical factors that are assessed, right? To be able to ascertain if a building is green and if that building over the period of its life cycle cuts down its GHG emissions. There is no definition or standard definition for a green building. Hence why you can see a building exteriorly and not even know that the building is a green building, right? The green building starts from the design stage. The green features are incorporated into a building from the design stage of the building. So at the point of engaging your architect or engaging your structural engineer or engaging the design team, that is where you can integrate green features most sustainably, right? Most efficiently. Now, the construction technique that is going to be deployed, the type of technology that is going to be used at the end of the, or integrated into the building at the end of the building, are secondary. The design phase is the most effective opportunity that any project has to integrate green features at the design stage. Another consideration that we usually make is post-construction. Is it that, okay, so Oluwaseyi, are you saying that when a building has been completely developed, it is impossible for that building to transition into a green building? No, it is not impossible. It is actually very possible. But at this time, we have expended enough financial resources already. We have already emitted certain level of GHG that needs to be accounted for. And then the whole reintegration and renovation process would also cost more money, and then would also increase, though in the long term, cut down on the GHG emissions. But for that period, that the construction phase, there will be certain level of GHG that will be emitted. So both pre-construction and post-construction is potent, but pre-construction is most potent for integrating green features. Okay, so a green building incorporates the design techniques, technologies, and materials that reduce dependency on fossil fuels, reducing or completely eliminating the environmental impact of that building. The benefits of green building is critically in three different factors: the energy used during the construction and during the operation of the building, right? Water used during construction and during the operations of the building, and then the material used during construction and during the operation of the building. By standard, a green building is a building that cuts down a minimum 20% of its energy use, carbon emissions, water use, and material use. So the goal for me is, for a typical building, I probably can use maybe 60 tons of cement bags, right, for a typical building. But when I'm transitioning to build to a green building, my goal is to be able to reduce the minimum, at the minimum, 20% of the resource required for the construction and operation of the building, as well as energy and then water. Now, let's dive right into the different strategies. I'll go straight into the different strategies. As mentioned earlier, for construction, I would refer us to a course that we can take in case it's something that you're really interested in looking at building or upscaling in. Sustainable design for the architects in the room is one key skill that can really promote you as an individual, and then upskill you, and then enable you to be much more relevant in today's economy, in today's space. I have received multiple requests on just individuals who want to build green buildings. They've highlighted and seen that, oh, buildings actually do contribute, and if I really want to make impact, I should start from myself. Some of them transition or convert their cars to hybrid cars, and then the next line of action is, how can I transition my house to a more sustainable home, a more sustainable building? What that means is that in the long run, I will consume less energy, right? It reduces my PHCN bills, right? My PHCN bill is reduced, cost is cut down, then the environmental impact is also heavily reduced. Now, just to go back to the conversation of the day, a sustainable construction is identifying what sustainability metrics we can integrate in the design stage, the processing stage, which is the construction stage, and then the operation stage. So at the design stage, is it pre-construction, right? The design stage, what sustainable considerations do we make at the design stage, at the operation stage or reuse stage? And then in case we are retrofitting or renovating, what key components of the building? So when you are renovating a building or you want to transition your already developed structure into a green building, you don't necessarily have to pull down the whole structure, right? It completely defeats the purpose. If the building is 5 years and above, why not identify key features that you can just replace, that will cut down on your emissions and your energy demand? Now, what other materials or recyclable materials can I infuse at the construction phase, right? Most of these conversations happen on your design table, where you are speaking with your consultant and say, oh, what materials we want to integrate recycled materials in this construction. What areas of the building, or what part of the building can we infuse recycling material that will not in any way affect the structural integrity of my structure, right? The shape and form, the positioning of the building is one factor. The durability of the materials you're using. You want to run away from materials that you need to replace every 1 year. What that means is that you are cutting down heavily on your emissions and your demand to continue to increase the GHG footprint of that building. If you purchase materials that will last you 25 years before it needs replacement, you have heavily cut down on the footprint of that building. So durability is one key factor, one key strategy that we look out for as green building experts. Then the design, is it regenerative? Is it adaptable? Is it flexible enough for me? Can I easily convert this commercial structure into a residential structure, right? Some structures are very difficult to renovate or convert for a different use. Is it regenerative? That's a regenerative design is a design that you can easily transform its use without heavily doing heavy deconstruction or breaking down my time. Oh my goodness. So that's the conversation around regenerative design. Then efficient construction, what systems do I put in place, even at the construction phase, that will reduce my energy use at the construction phase, right? Then what sustainable material can I infuse? Another key component is your materials. Where are they sourced from? Because of course, you know that your transportation of that materials also produces a level of GHG emissions. So locally sourced materials are most times heavily recommended. Excuse me. Now, the source country also, okay, I mentioned that the source country is also a key component, right? If your materials are locally sourced, it reduces the environmental or the GHG emissions of that product. Now, longevity, we've talked about that, then future deconstruction. So we'll go right into, because of our time, we'll go right into some strategies, and I'll use this design to just explain the passive design strategies that are adopted in during building constructions that can heavily reduce your demand for energy or reduce your need for mechanical cooling. Now, one critical fact to mention is this: the major component of your building, right, that requires you to either consume the thermal comfort of the building, right? For green design experts like us, we look out the need for mechanical cooling because we know that our ACs are heavy energy consuming equipment. If I can either convert my ACs to an energy efficient ACs with higher coefficient of performance, or convert my AC to an AC that is powered by solar renewable energy, I would heavily reduce my demand for energy from either use of generator or whatever mechanical device you use to power your building. Right, so the thermal comfort of the building is one critical component, hence why insulation is a key strategy for buildings. The more insulated your building is, the lesser the energy it will consume to maintain good thermal comfort. Now, it's a very wide conversation, right? The metrics differ from region to region. In regions that are hot, right, that are like here in Africa, we have 95% of the climatic condition is hot. We rarely have, in fact, with the climate change that we're experiencing, we are seeing that there's a lot of changes that has been made that even the farmers are trying to adjust because of the cycle of the raining season and the cold season, and then the season where we have high solar energy, right? When we have high solar intensity. Now, if your building is insulated heavily, it reduces the heat gain of that building, thereby reducing the energy demand to introduce mechanical cooling. That's just the summary of it. So if you look at this design on your screen, you will see that you have your sun, right, on the eastern part of the building. And there are some key features in this building that has enabled the heat gain to be reduced heavily, right? One key feature would start with is, if you look at the roof design, you'd see that we have a form of opening at the roof level, right? You'd see that this design allows for warm air to easily evacuated from that space. Why? Because warm air rises to the top of the building, right? Most times when your heat is gained either through the window, for those of us who are architects or designers in the room, you know that for buildings that have a level of opening, the goal is to reduce the wall to window ratio, right? When you reduce the wall to window ratio, it reduces the amount of heat that is gained into that space. So you want to ensure that space has good ventilation, allowing for release of already hot air that has been gained into the space and introduction of more cooler air, thereby reducing your demand for cooling, right? So another key feature is the overhangs of the windows. You can see that there is a shaded window. There is a maybe let them just use my mouse, the arrow of my mouse here. You can see this section is the overhang of that window. What is it typically doing? It's allowing for a reflection of the heat of the solar ray that is coming from the sun. Of course, heat rays come with, I'm sorry, the sun's light comes with a lot of heat, right? It is heat intensive. So you need high level of insulation. And apart from insulation, you then allow for introduction of overhangs, right? To prevent direct heat gain from the window. Why? Because most of the windows, they are slimmer, right? And they allow for quicker heat gains. Heat transfer is much quicker than through walls, right? There is little to no opportunity for heat to be reflected back when you have a lot of windows introduced in a space. Hence why it's either if you must have areas, of course, for buildings like residential buildings where you cannot completely seal off the building and make it a concealed space, you then introduce a thermally efficient glass, right, that has a level of air gap and has high insulation within the glass to reduce or reflect back the heat that is coming with the sun's ray. Right. Another key factor is the type of roofing that you use and the conversation around green roof. If you are one who is open to having a green roof, and if you're not one who is open to having a green roof, ensuring that the type of roofing that is done is properly insulated, apart from the roof slab that is then you look at for introducing green roofs. What are the features of my roof? What other method can I use to harvest heat, right? And then the conversation of putting the solar on your roof comes into play. Another conversation is introducing plants on your roof. Why? Because they are major receptors. They need sunlight. They need the heat to be able to germinate. And then they also reduce heavily, right, the heat gain that is transferred into the building. Another key factor, it's just a lot of explanation to do, but another key factor is the heat that is gained by the earth crust. Typically, when heat is transmitted from the sun during the day, at night, all the heat that has been gained by the earth crust is then released into the atmosphere. Hence why you notice if your apartment is not well ventilated at night, you just be experiencing heavy heat and you're wondering, where is this heat coming from? It is the heat that is being released from the earth crust that has been observed during the day, right? So having good enough ventilation will help to release that heat that is being gained during the day, and not just any type of ventilation, ensuring that those ventilation or glasses are thermally efficient, and then also introducing plants, right? They require these radiations and they reduce the intensity of heat that is transferred into the building, especially when you have plants surrounding your structure. It reduces the heat intensity that's transferred into the building. Gracefully, if you have a green roof, it completely reduces almost by 80% the heat that is transferred into the building from the roof. And you know that most of the heat transferred into the building comes from the roof. Okay, those are the key strategies. Another factor is the energy use, right? What powers your building? What are the components of the power that is used in that building? Is it sustainable energy that is being used? Are you deploying some form of renewable energy? You can see from this design that we have we have solar panels displayed on the roof to harvest heat energy and do a lot of conversion and storage within the facility, right? um, you also integrating features into your building that enables use of lesser energy. For example, a typical example is every building requires water. And in this part of the world where we don't have public means that the government produces and supplies water to buildings, you most likely have to generate or extract water from the ground yourself. So you see a lot of construction, a lot of residences having their own borehole, drilling their own water, and then ensuring that there's a level of treatment before the water comes into the building. Now, introducing low flow faucets, your taps, your shower heads, your kitchen taps, most of them are designed to consume a lot of energy. You see a lot of water wastage, thereby heavily impacting on the demand for energy to pump water into the building. And then, of course, that translates into higher GHG emissions. So you have opportunity to introduce, instead of using the typical types of faucets, you introduce low flow faucets or censored faucet. What that typically will do is reduce your water usage within the structure, thereby cutting down on your need for more power. Another key feature is reducing stormwater runoff, right? And harvesting of rainwater. These are key components that we introduce into buildings to reduce our demand for extracting water from the earth crust, right? We can harvest rainwater, store it, recycle it, reuse it either for washing or cleaning or flushing, right? Another key component or key strategy that we introduce into building is the recycling of waste or grey water. A lot of this is not being practiced in this part of the world, but in the global north, it's definitely practiced. We have a building in Nigeria that is LEED certified that actually recycles its grey water and reuses it for car park, car washing of the vehicles that are parked in the compound. Uh, Gardening is reused for gardening. It's also reused heavily for cleaning of the space because, of course, it's treated and properly tested, right? So that has introduced a level of circularity, reducing our need to frequently go back and pump fresh water for use for the operations of the building, right? Another key feature that is not currently being implemented in this part of the world is the use of the type of vehicles when you're looking at your scope 3 emissions now, if you're doing your carbon accounting, the type of vehicles that service that home. Are they vehicles that are heavy emitters, right? So another key factor, which I would say are my design metrics, as I mentioned in the previous picture, is optimizing the site potential. We've mentioned a few site features, like I mentioned earlier, harnessing the ecological habitats that currently exist in that building location, then using sustainable energy in the building, protecting and conserving water, heavily conserving water, right? And optimizing material usage at the building space. Of course, during your operations and maintenance, all of these practices have to be laid down, maybe in your design of the fit out guide, if your building is a commercial building that will be leased for other users, to be able to adhere to the green building design practices and systems that you have put in place. And then we also touched on enhancing the indoor air quality, that is being able to reduce the heat gain heavily. If there's anything you would take home today, is heavily reducing the impact of the external bioclimatic condition on the building. If you are somewhere where it snows, what you are doing is you need to be able to maintain a level of thermal comfort. You don't need more heat. You need lesser cold gain in the so you need to insulate your house to prevent cold from being transferred into the building. That's why you see a lot of heaters are introduced in the global north, unlike here in the global south where we have the AC is introduced in the space. So, but the overall goal is to reduce our need for mechanical cooling, which cannot be completely eliminated, but can be heavily reduced. We can reduce our dependencies on those components. Now, optimizing site potential.
I please, in case you have questions, you can begin to type in your questions as I believe we are already rounding up. Please, in case you have questions, please, you can always have it in your key. You can always ask it in the Q&A questions and session, whereby you can easily take your question. Thank you so much, Ma. I think you can go on now.
Okay, now if you look at this design, please, like he said, drop your questions. I have to round up in the next 10 minutes. I should round up. Okay, if you look at the picture here, you can see that the goal here is optimizing the site potential. So I'm just going to very quickly read through. We want to optimize your building orientation, right? You need to identify where you want your building, the exterior of your building to face, so as to maximize the sun's free energy, right? Maximizing the sun's free energy is looking at where does the sun rise from and where does it set. How can I position my building and reduce the windows, the number of windows that would be positioned at the eastern part where the sun will rise from, right? And when the sun sets, how do I have position more windows on that side of the building to allow for free flow of cool air after the sun has set? That's typically what this is saying. Positioning your building to leverage and capitalize on the sun's free energy, right? Now, look at this design. I am going to just quickly, after this, run through the different sustainable building materials that can be adopted. But if we look at this design, you see that there are certain key features that are introduced in this building, right? The building has successfully been able to adopt some green measures that reduces its demand for fossil fuel, non-renewable energy, and allows to leverage on the climatic condition of that building, enhancing the comfort of the building, the users in the building, also reducing the heat gain of the building. One key area is this building has successfully positioned solar panels on its roof. Look at it very carefully. Now, there are two levels of protection for heat gain at the roof level. And you know, of course, if you are in a building that has multiple floors, the roof, the level that is closest to the sun is usually more hot. Why? Because of the heavy heat gain that happens at that level. Now, the strategy introduced in this design is first, the solar panels were raised, elevated solar panels, right? This has cut down a minimum of 60% of heat gain, right? That are now being converted into energy that will be used to operate in that building, stored, of course, with the battery system, and then reused in that building, thereby cutting down on GHG emissions from the use of generators, especially diesel generators. Now, the second component there is you can see rainwater collection. Now, most times roofs are designed with drainages or vents that allow for the water to go directly from the roof into the drains. There's no collection happening. There's no harnessing happening. This is one source of water that is currently not heavily being harnessed. Now, you can see this building. There's a pipe that collects rainwater that lands on the roof and takes it down to the storage tank, right, at the basement of this structure, right? This, once it is taken down, once the water has been transported to the storage facility, it is then treated for further use within the building. Another key feature, right, is the high performing window. Now, when we say high performing window, like we mentioned earlier, they are thermally efficient window. They are windows that reduces the heat gain from heat rays, right, from sunlight, right? They are heavily thermally efficient. They reduce heat gain. They allow you to enjoy the light, right? So you can introduce a daylight sensor that explores the heat, the intensity, the light intensity coming from the sun, and turns off the internal light, right? Allowing for use of the light from the sun only, especially during the day. You won't need to turn on your light bulbs because there's a daylight sensor within the building that has identified ingress of sunlight coming in from the exterior of the building and automatically switched off the mechanical light fittings, right? Excuse me, electrical light fittings. Now, this is one key feature that allows, if you have a high performing window, a thermally efficient window, and a daylight sensor, you can enhance and leverage the sun's free light energy. Now, you can see that this building has a driveway that allows for a skylight. A skylight is typically an opening within the structure that allows for natural light to come in, especially in areas that, based on the design of the building, is darkened. You will need some form of electrical lighting. When you open up that area or convert the type of roofing that you use there to a transparent or translucent roofing, it allows for natural light to come in without you requiring or needing electrical light, right? That's one feature. Another feature is the native plants that are maintained. These plants are the plants that were existing at the point of the construction of this project. They were not cut down, right? They were not cut down or destroyed, they were maintained. Now, I mentioned the heat island conversation when I spoke earlier of the heavy heat gain that we're experiencing due to the road networks that are constructed, storing heavily heat energy and releasing this heat energy during what's it called? Excuse me, when the sun has gone down, right? The heat island conversation is one key feature that is affecting cities today. And when you have a lot of trees, it reduces that heat island phenomena. There's reduction because the coal tar roads, the roads would not absorb a lot of heat gain, nor will they store it, right? The heat is either absorbed by the plants and completely protecting the solid part of the road that has a property to capture heat and store heat. Okay, another feature that we see here is the grey water system. I've mentioned this earlier. Collecting grey water. Grey water is typically water that is used at the wash basins, not water from the WC, the water closets. No, the wastewater that is produced when you maybe wash your mouth or wash your face at the wash basins. If you have from the design stage, designed your plumbing system. That's what typically green buildings do, right? Green designers, they design the plumbing system to have two different wastewater collection system. One that collects the gray water separately from the black water. The black water is the fecal water, right? Collects gray water into a different storage tank, allowing for easy treatment and recycling of that water for reuse within the facility. Majorly not even for maybe for wash use, but most times gray water are taken back into the pipes, the inlets that service the water closet tank, so they can be used for flushing activities and all of that. So here, these are typical strategies, right? Typical sustainable strategies that are introduced into buildings. Because of our time, I'm just going to run through green building materials, sustainable materials that I explored when we want to adopt the green building approach or green building concept. We look at bamboo, we have reclaimed natural wood, the use of cork. All of these innovations are typically foreign or new in this part of the world, but it's an innovation that is heavily being used in the global north. Cork, straw balls, reclaimed, reclaimed or recycled steel, coconut crust, periwinkle shells are also introduced and used as some form of reinforcement, just as you use what's it called? The concrete reinforcement that is typically used. Then bioplastics are also used as some form of reinforcement when you are when construction guys are creating their reinforcement materials. Then the stainless steel, then the recycled plastic. Here are certain features. I'll just skip through them very quickly so
Thank
that,
you.
yeah, so that we can just see how or what those materials look like. These are insulation material.
All right, thank you. Man, we can hear you again. Is it your network? We can't hear you anymore. Hello, Madam Olusheyi. Olusheyi, are you there? Okay, I think we've actually lost the network now. Please, let's just wait a bit as he comes back. So I can see we've learned a lot. Your battery, all right, don't worry, go and charge. We are in the solar world. All right. I think she's struggling with her network. I would like to recognize the presence of our second speaker. She's on board now, and she's here with us in person of Ifeoma Malo. Good evening, Ma. Okay,
Good
yeah, I think we
evening.
have. Thank you so much, Ma. We are glad to have you on board. I think we have Oluwaseyi now. Madam, are you there? Please, can you unmute your mic?
I'm here. Sorry about the breach in
All
network.
right, no problem. We were actually waiting for you to kindly round up as we move forward. Thank you, Ma.
Okay, I mean, it's been a pleasure. I hope we've been able to gain one or two. We believe that impact, like I mentioned earlier when I joined, is the major objective of sessions like this. We look forward to seeing more and more people transition from building contemporary and not and normal buildings to integrating green features, sustainable features, and sustainable materials in their building projects. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. I wish you all success on your learning curve. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Is someone sending emojis to show appreciation to Madam Oluwaseyi? Thank you so much for having us, and we also having you. And thank you for the precious time you spent with us. Myself, I've been able to marry this into what I do, permaculture, and really I've learned a lot from this session. If you have done, okay, I can see. Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you, Desmond. Awesome. Just type in the chat box whatsoever thing, just a snapshot of whatsoever thing you've learned so far. Please can you do so? All right, I would use this medium to begin to welcome our second speaker on the board. She's so gorgeous, and I've been always wanting to hear from her. Kindly permit me to read about shortly as we welcome her on board in a GV. Thank you so much. Please kindly listen as I go ahead. Ifeoma is an energy assets expert and a climate action champion. She has over 23 years experience building and directing organizational operations and strategy, supporting startup and MSMEs in Africa. In the past 10 years, she has become a recognized and credible leader in the energy and utility markets, working on the intersection of energy transition, energy markets, energy and climate financing, and also climate adaptation markets. She's experienced in political economy, energy policy, energy markets, developmental economy, climate and environment, sustainability, dispute resolution, process facilitation, and organizational development. I believe everybody should be clapping by now. Yes. Thank you so much. I would like to welcome on the board. You have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. And good afternoon, everyone. So sorry that I was slightly late. Can I share I'm going to just put on my video very quickly to say hi to everyone, just so that you
sure, we need to
see my face.
Awesome.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Yeah, but I think I want to share my presentation. So if I can go off video, and then if you give me permission to share my screen.
Fine. Please, can you do so? Awesome. We can see your video now. I mean, your slide now.
Can you see my slide?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to turn it into a slideshow. So give me 1 second from the beginning. Okay, so welcome again, everybody. And it's great to be speaking to all of you today. The topic I was given was the renewable energy and energy management. And I'm going to contextualize it from global to regional to Nigeria. And I think these are conversations that we should actually begin to have as the world is changing and changing very fast. The world we were in October 2024 is not the world that we're in now. We are now seeing an increase in nationalism. Countries are retracting. There's a trade war ongoing between, it looks like, between the US and several other countries. But like I tell the team at Clean Tech Hub, we shouldn't have a simplified approach to looking at these things. It's not just a US problem. It's becoming a global tariff war because it affects everybody, and our ability even to buy and sell electricity, or who we buy from, to sell our national oil, or even to be able to import solar panels and goods here. Because unfortunately, Nigeria is still not an export country when it comes to anything that has to do with electricity, not the equipment, and not a lot of the services. So we're also caught up in all of the global changes that are going on. So in the developing world, we have 1 billion people without energy access. And if you look at the data increasingly shows that Africa makes up a big part of that 1 billion number. So for instance, we have 621 million people without energy access. It's come down slightly since this slide was done. So it's come down to about slightly under 600 million, but there's still a gap, right? And we hear also that we have data to show that about 600,000 people are killed every year in Nigeria by black pollutants, usually from the use of our generators and the use of unclean fuels for cooking, right? So there's been a lot of targets that have been set from, the CAAPs, and even from country level targets that have said that people want to reach energy access by a certain time. There's been 2030 as a date, 2025 to meet the black carbon emissions, and then 2080, is what it's going to take for Africa to reach its own universal access to electricity. So what does this mean? That if you have an estimated 1 billion people without electricity, and that's 70% of the world, and that's a huge amount of those people that are unserved are really living in our continent. And then you add to that the amount of black carbon that is killing Africans because of the kind of energy we then use, then you understand the scale of the problem. One of the things that came out I cite this data a lot so that people would actually have a sense of what it is that we're facing. 53% of off-grid households in Africa use kerosene for lighting and even for cooking, right? So what does this mean? When you've looked at this Africa energy landscape, it's really scary, right? And so when we're forecasting for energy, and we're forecasting for GDP, we've had to think differently. When we're talking about energy demand management, and we're talking about energy management or energy demand management, we've also had to think differently. Since everybody became an electrician, everybody can now calculate their NEPA credits or their DISCO credits because of the band A, band B things. It's made us become more responsible users when it comes to electricity, and to make us much more aware of our consumption patterns and how we manage that as well. So you can see that Nigeria over time, from a lot of the laws and policies that we have, has been carefully planning and phasing our transition to clean energy and investing, in its resources. And the reason is not too far-fetched. It's because of our energy security. There's a need to part of the reason why we're having a lot of ungoverned areas is because there is no developmental indices that are getting to those places. So you see an increase in terrorism and in banditry in ungoverned spaces where there is no economic activity. And these are usually last mile and rural. But even when you come to urban places like Abuja or Lagos, we still have a shortfall in energy supply because the demand is high, right? And so you can see that on average, the GDP is 7.5% higher in our first decade when we started doing the forecasting of GDP, and 6.4% higher over the nearly 3 decades until 2050 when we started doing a lot of modeling around potential impacts when we do or add clean energy into our forecasting and our modeling. And this is because we're now looking at how to transition to green and clean energy sources as a top priority for us to reduce fossil dependence and for us to reach some level of energy parity. This is still talking about Nigeria's context, and I don't want to dwell too much on this because, I mean, the data speaks for itself, but we can come back to it and dissect it with more context from the examples I'll give later on. So we are talking about Nigeria, but I also wanted to talk about Africa because Nigeria can be situated outside of the African conversation. Somebody said recently on a panel where I was speaking that when they talk about this almost 85% or 60% of Africans without energy access, that if they remove Nigeria, that the numbers would drop drastically. So that means that when we talk about energy poverty, Nigeria is really up there. And so this is our conventional grid system. Again, I was asking some of the new members of my team when we were onboarding them, I asked them whether they know how power gets to their house, right? So this is a picture of how it happens from the power plant all the way to the transformer and transmission lines, all the way to your neighborhood transformer, down to your distribution lines, and then it gets into your house through the poles. That's exactly how a conventional power system works. Well, here is the thing: for us to do a better energy demand of our resources, we'd have to introduce clean energy, right? So what this means is that if we look at all the country assessments and all the numbers, we can actually bring these numbers down by the way we introduce clean energy. So we have a growing off-grid energy market. And there's an 18% renewable energy generation target, you know, that we were supposed to reach by 2020. Didn't quite reach it because of COVID, but we're now on track. But the potential for off-grid solar lighting remains very high. Pico solar solutions for peri-urban communities. Peri-urban communities would be like Nyanya, Suleja, those sort of outskirts. They are not rural, but they are peri-urban. So, but they face some of the same issues around electricity, where for weeks, months, they don't have electricity. And then for the higher systems, it will be for people in town that are trying to now manage their electricity with what they get from the discos. So, but the potential is high, especially in rural Nigeria, right? Especially for off-grid. And that's where we have a lot of mini grids and microgrids being built. This is data from the NBS. This is updated data. I've been looking for the more current one, but it hasn't, I couldn't find anything that I could work with on NBS. But you could see how the amount of inefficient lights we use, from kerosene to batteries to grass to candles to purchased firewood. What it means is that when we're talking about energy demand, you know, the question, first of all, I had to ask myself is, who are we talking about? Is it the people that are getting more electricity from the grid and then need to reduce their costs or need to manage their inefficient use? Or is it the rural communities that don't even have at all, you know, at all, and that we're even trying to get to have energy access? That's why the data that I cited in the beginning, from global to regional to Nigeria in terms of our energy deficit, is important. Because one of the things people forget is Nigeria is largely rural. Our urban cities are packed with people, but in terms of the landmass and how spread out we are geographical, it is a rural country, right? So when you see that about 15 million people or so live in Lagos, 15 million out of 200 million isn't a lot, right? Because Lagos is just a city. But when you look at all the suburbs and all the rural areas, that's where you see a lot of population and a lot of land. And a lot of these people are using these sort of things for their energy and lighting and electricity. Again, I won't waste time on this. This is the tiers of electricity usage and quality based on income levels and the kind of things people use them for. But I wanted to talk first about tier 1 or tier 0. These are the ones that are living in our villages, don't have lights, no grid, nothing, no transformer. Tier 1, you know, these are people who are able to charge their phone, but they are using solar systems or they are using all these rechargeable batteries. But then skip tier 2 and 3 and come to tier 5. These are the people who have washing machines, iron toasters, microwave, air conditioned vacuum cleaner. So these are heavy users of electricity, right? And again, we'll come back to this. I'm sure you have questions about why this is important. But this is why we introduce renewable energy opportunities, so that the people from tier 1, tier 0 to tier 3 actually have things that they can use. So when you look at renewable energy systems, they can cover for things from tier 0, 1, 2, 3. I'll give you an example. We have an office, 2 buildings in our offices, and it's a hybrid. We have NEPA. Sometimes we have them for about 4 hours, 5 hours a day if we're lucky. The rest of the time, there's no light. So if you're doing an 8-hour, 9-hour work day, right, from 8 to 5, if you do not have anything, if you don't have a generator or you do not have solar panels, then your team is redundant. You are redundant. You guys are just waiting for NEPA to come back on. So we have like a microgrid on our roof for the 2 buildings that continues to provide us power even when the grid is off. But those things power mainly a lot of the things that are around our air condition, our laptops, refrigeration, our dispenser water, the general lights, our fans, phone charging, our radios, cameras, those sort of things. With that sort of demand, with that sort of supply, we don't use washing machines or ironing. We don't use our electric cookers. We don't use any of them. We don't even use our vacuum cleaners. So these tiers of electricity usage helps you to think about where do you fall on the spectrum and how better can you reduce your costs and increase your efficiency when it comes to your electricity usage in general. And this is why I always encourage that we introduce solar energy opportunities, right? Because the potentials are high. There's also potential for wind and biomass in Nigeria and hydropower. There's been a lot of work to build up our hydropower plants and geothermal plants to get them to be up to capacity. But these things are large-scale investments, they need a lot of money. Even when you're building small-scale hydropower for local needs, it's still a lot of money. Where we have been able to reduce the dollar demand on renewable imports is mainly on solar energy, but on wind, biomass, and hydropower, it's still a long thing because there's a lot of complexity involved in it. But the potential is very high in Nigeria, and the feasibility for them to work and drive energy in urban and rural areas also very high. But there's a lot involved in it at the same time. The energy management frameworks that I think are important to note are some of the policies that are in place. There is a National Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Policy, which was first drafted, I think, in 2010 or 2012. I can't remember. But with that policy, there's also an action plan that came out a year after it, the National Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Action Plan. There is a National Energy Master Plan. There's the Energy Transition Plan that came out, I think, in 2023 through the Office of the VP, Professor Sibanjo. There's also the mini-grid regulation. Sorry, some of them are not mentioned here. Mini-grid regulation of 2017. You can find it on NEC's website, the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Authority. Some of these are the policies, and then there's the Electricity Act, which was passed last year. So it's an act that sort of covers the entire electricity sector. From both generation, distribution, transmission, and even off-grid, covers everything, and also all of the frameworks that have to be in place. So everything was now collapsed into some of this, some of these policies and plans were now collapsed into this Electricity Act. And that is the act that sort of forms the fulcrum of the Nigerian electricity sector. But the challenges still remain. We still have outdated grid infrastructure. We still have insufficient financing for renewable energy grid, but also for the national grid. There's still regulatory bottlenecks which we're trying to sort of sort out, which are now limiting private sector investments. A lot of the banks in Nigeria don't invest in renewable energy. Many of them are shy to, and that's because they don't understand the sector and they feel like the sector still needs de-risking. But are there opportunities for improvements? Certainly, several of them. One of the key ones that I will mention is leveraging digital technology for smart grid and real-time energy management. And I will go on and talk about it in a few minutes. I have a few more slides to go, about 5 or 6, but let's look at some case studies. I wanted to use Nigeria, but I thought, let's use other countries that we can sort of maybe learn something from, right? Kenya is very successful in geothermal and off-grid solar energy. Kenya has been very good with being able to integrate their off-grid solar into their national energy planning. And so that helps with energy demand simulation, helps with load management for the grid, even for how they distribute power within urban and rural area. And even though, in the past, they faced several energy shortages, the government was able to prioritize renewable energy investments, which helped to drive growth in geothermal and off-grid solar energy. So what did they do? They had a strong policy framework, which was formed under their Vision 2030. They invested in geothermal power, which now supplies over 40% of the national grid. They had large-scale adoption of off-grid solar home systems, making it very possible for foreign investors to come and build mini and microgrids across rural Kenya. So rural Kenya has almost as much electricity as urban Kenya, as Nairobi and some of the Mombasa and some of the urban city. And some of what the Kenyan government did was simple. They were like, we're not going to charge a tariff on solar. We're also not going to charge import taxes on solar. So if you're bringing panels, batteries, charge controllers, for I think about 5 years or so, or 7 years, the Kenyan government said you can bring it in for free. Because what people who bring it in do is when they customs charge them all of this money, they pass it on to the end consumer. So if you were able to afford an 8 kVA solar installation last year, you probably won't be this year because custom has increased tariffs. But in Kenya, they just said, no, we will leave it at zero tariff. Let everywhere be electrified. And that really helped to drive electricity to peri-urban and urban places, right? So the impact was that Kenya became a leader in geothermal. 6 million rural households gained access to electricity via off-grid solar solution. And there was lower dependence on fossil fuel and reduced carbon emission. They were able to actually boast that they have reduced their carbon emission in Kenya because of all the steps that they took. South Africa is another one. So South Africa, like Nigeria, they had only one entity that was supplying electricity to them. And because they were very coal-led country, their electricity was dependent on coal. It became, burdensome to meet all of the energy demands that were in the country. So the government designed a program to attract private investments in renewable energy. They created a competitive bidding process that was transparent to bring in private sector. They integrated solar and wind energy into the national grid. They provided government incentives and policy support, similar to what Kenya did, to allow people who want to come and do electricity business in their country, do it and do it well. So they've got 6,000 megawatts of renewable energy added to the grid. They've increased private sector participation, creating new jobs and boosting local economies, and diversification of energy sources. And they are now reducing blackouts because they were also having a lot of power cuts in their country. Also, to meet all of their carbon emission targets and commitments, they are reducing their dependency on coal as well. So those are two examples that I wanted to show you. I showed you a sample of how electricity gets to your house. Remember that slide I showed you earlier on? Let me just go back to it. That slide is important because it helps you see how this also, remember this is how power works today. If you get more electricity from Ikeja, Benin, Abuja Disco, Yola Disco, Kano Disco, wherever, this is exactly how it comes to your house, right? But then we're now moving to a new energy system that can help us with our energy management and energy demands, right, in Nigeria. This is that current system that we talked about. And we've agreed that, that system is not very efficient. So the system that is going to be efficient and help us manage our energy demand better is when we integrate, we have a better reliable grid and we mix it up with a clean off-grid system and have it be a hybrid system. And so how do we have that reliable grid? Some of it is moving a lot of the power that we consume to heavy manufacturing that needs it, and then allowing households some portion of it, but then also integrating a lot of clean renewable energy off-grid into our systems. And there's a rise of renewables in Nigeria. I gave Kenya and South Africa as examples, but Nigeria isn't doing so badly. These are some projects. Some of these are 10, 15 years old. So they've really done so well. You know, one of the first off-grid rooftop microgrid solution was by Blue Camel in Guzape, who built an entire estate that runs off-grid. None of it is connected to Abuja Disco. Or is it the mini grids that GVE has been building from Mina to Plateau to rural Plateau, to Mangu, and some of those other places where they have mini grids in Kano, in Anambra? Or is it the small hydro you need to have piloted and that we're looking to upscale and replicate in other states to help reduce a lot of the energy demands that comes from the center? So these small hydros are now centered.
Your slide is not changing.
Oh, mine is not changing. Is it?
Yeah. It's actually on tiers of electricity. Yeah, I think yeah, we have it now.
Okay, so this is the one I've been talking through. And then biogas.
Are we on case study now?
No. Is that where you are?
Yeah, key solutions and future outlook. That is where we are now.
Tell me where you are now. Sorry, because
solutions and future outlook.
Okay, I've gone past that.
Okay.
Current energy system, is that where you are? Can you see that?
Current energy system. No, now we are on conclusions.
Oh, you're on conclusions now.
Okay.
Okay, that's where you are?
Yes. Okay. We can't actually find that. We are still on key solutions and future outlook.
I just shared my screen again. Is that where you are?
All right. Yeah.
Is it changing now?
We are still on key solutions.
Okay, please reshare my screen for me. That means something happened. Reshare my screen, please.
All right. Thank you, ma.
Okay, can you see my screen now?
Not yet.
But did you see all the case studies I showed when I was doing case studies?
We saw them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Hello, everyone. Ms. Ify, I can just help you share. So let me share my screen.
All right. If my screen is not working, please go to Gift's screen. Gift, I suspect I might have changed a few things on my own slide. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Gift. Okay, Gift, you can just reshare your screen, you know. Okay. Yeah, I think it's coming up now.
Whose screen? Gift's own or mine?
Gift screen. Yeah, Gift screen is coming up now.
Okay, let's see what she has then.
All right, I think it's up now.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So we're on case study for South Africa.
You can move from that. I'm done with that.
Key solutions and future outlook.
Yeah, so the key solutions and future outlooks. I think I have about 3 or 4 more slides and we're done. The key solution for better energy demand is by introducing decentralized energy solutions. It's why we make a case for solar mini grids and standalone home solar systems, and why we integrate off-grid solutions for rural electrification. So those places where the grid cannot reach, maybe because they are sparsely populated or the cost of extending the grid from one town to the other based on population numbers doesn't make sense, you introduce off-grid solutions. And then you do community-driven energy projects, because when this happens, communities, when they own those projects, they own those mini-grids or microgrids, they are better managed and better run. We also need to introduce private sector and investment incentives, regulatory reforms, to attract investors. We also need international collaborations as well, right? Next slide, Gift. So some of the key takeaways from this presentation is to note that Nigeria has immense energy potential, but we're still short of money in terms of how to grow it and drive it. It is very important that we are looking at different models of making sure that those energy potentials are actualized. One of the things I think we have as a call to action is looking at collective efforts from both government, private sector, and individuals. That's how other countries have been able to do better energy demand management. The idea of integrating our grid with off-grid systems is already far advanced in Nigeria. It's already ongoing. I want to mention a lot of the work that the Rural Electrification Agency in Nigeria is doing and has been doing. They've rolled out a lot of programs that have catalyzed the off-grid sector as the off-grid solar sector as the fulcrum of how to energize or electrify rural Nigeria. So some of it's rural and peri-urban Nigeria, not just rural. Some of it is their Energizing Markets program, Energizing Education program, where I think they did over 20-something federal universities, the DES program, the Nigerian Electricity Project program, the Energizing Agricultural program, Energizing Health program, all of this under one agency, helping to distribute power towards different sectors and towards different segments of the society using off-grid. There's still a lot of work to be done, but I can tell you that Nigeria is very much on the way. I thank you for your time, and I'll be happy to take any questions that you have. Can anybody hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, and good evening, Madam Ifoma. Thank you for this insightful session that you've led with us this evening. And I also want to thank our first facilitator for the insightful session. Dear Climate Actors, I believe you have questions regarding the session, the last session we just had. And please do well and drop your questions in the Q&A session. And should you also want to ask your question directly, you can feel free and get to raise your hand. So kindly raise your hand if you want to ask your question directly. Yeah, let me check the Q&A session. Okay, I can just see questions that has to do with the first session and what's the name of this module. Yeah, and I can see some comments from the participants how engaging the session has been. Yeah, these are very, very insightful session. The topic of the session you just concluded is renewable energy and energy management. So if you have a question, please raise your hand for our facilitator to attend to your question. Okay, I can see Gallo from Habu. You can please unmute your mic and speak. Ask your question just in 30 seconds.
Okay, good afternoon, and thank you, Mrs. Ifoma, for the presentation. My name is Igalu Rodney, and I would like to ask, now for Nigeria, you've clearly stated that Nigeria is more of a rural country than an urban, which is true. Now, if you want to bring in sustainable way of producing electricity and energy for the country, how viable is the solar panels and other form of renewable energies like for the rural communities? Because the cost for them to maintain, to manage it is definitely not there because they are rural and they are not financially buoyant. So what is a form of solution for the rural community now? I hope you understand the question. Thank you.
I understand. That's a very good question. And it's a question that I hope that if I answer, many of you on the call, I don't know what you do for a living, that many of you will actually think of getting into this off-grid rural electrification business because, you know, there's money to be made on it, but the impact is even more. So his question was, if we're talking about extending energy access to rural communities through renewable energy, especially solar, and considering how expensive they are, how will they manage it? How will they pay for it? You know, considering the costs of the acquisition. A lot of the rural off-grid projects that are being done are heavily subsidized by governments, either at the federal level through REA or through their state governments. So when a mini grid developer wants to build mini grid in, let's say, Plateau, he wins one of the grants, the performance-driven grants from the REA to do this work, which is more or less like a subsidy. They go and build it. They go to the state government and say, see, I have money to build a mini grid. I've identified like 3 or 4 sites in your state. How do I go about it? And they also tell the governments, can we be in partnership with you? Here is what we want from you. We will need land. And we will need you to give us access to these communities. Because the other thing is, because of Nigeria today, you cannot just walk into any community blindly like that and tell them you want to give them electricity. Maybe 10 years ago, but now it's too risky. So the government will then step in through their local government's offices. They will make contact with those communities. Then they will help you with your entry, your community engagement and your community entry. Then the government would ask the community to give you the land, and they would help with paying the community the compensation, the adequate compensation for it. And then I think that some of the state governments will require that you teach their people how to operate those mini grid, at least first level operation of the mini grid if there's any issue. But more importantly, the mini grid developers are increasingly doing something they call productive use of energy. So you don't just go there and site a mini grid. You have to help those community people think about how to use the electricity. Some of them were subsistence farmers, maybe for one thing or the other, no water, no solar irrigation, they abandoned it. Some of them used to do welding, you know, iron smelting and welding, so small welding and everything, no electricity, they abandoned it. Now that you're bringing in a mini grid, you must teach the community how to then use that power to restart their business. So whether it's for farming, whether it's for small scale aquaculture, whatever it is. So a lot of mini grid developers incorporate that into their business and helps them. And it's been more successful for the mini grids that way, because that's how they pay for it. That's how they pay for the electricity that they use.
Thank you very much for that insightful answer. We sincerely appreciate. Just to take one more question. However, I feel you touched that question when you're making your presentation. Moses wants you to share more information on what you have to say about biodigesters. And just in a minute, if you can share your overview on that, we will sincerely appreciate that as well.
I wanted, Moses, I don't deal with biodigesters. There's someone on my team that has a better technical understanding of how biodigesters work. So if you send me an email or whatever, I'll connect you to him and he can give you some insights and answers. But I see that there's a Joy that says she has a question. I haven't heard from a woman. And you know me, I try to support women.
Yeah, this
Can Joy ask her
is
question?
a month to celebrate every woman. So we must respect you. We must respect every woman on this call for that. Okay, we are the amazing women accelerating action, climate action. Joy,
hello,
where are you?
Good afternoon.
Okay, good afternoon.
Okay, I think
ahead,
you
please,
kind of attended to my question because in the course of the teaching, you said that renewable energy sector is one sector that has so many opportunities, but some of these bodies are really skeptical about going into it. So I'm trying to ask, what are the things that one could do, or what are what signs would they see to encourage them to want to invest in this? So I think you touched on it in the course of answering that question. But if you can still share further insight on that. So what are they going, because I know renewable energy is seeming to be the only solution to, one of the major solutions, because the idea of fossil fuel being totally eradicated or stop being used in Africa or Nigeria is almost not possible. but now you're saying that it's companies are skeptical about going into it. So what are the signs that they need to see to make them see that, okay, this
No,
is a
not
viable solution?
companies. No, not companies. Financial sector, the Nigerian financial sector, banks
Oh,
and commercial banks in Nigeria are not really investing because they don't understand the sector. But it's more a reflection on the commercial banks in Nigeria because they do only short-term loans, quick, high interest rates. If you're going to invest in the renewable energy sector, you need patient capital. You cannot be looking for your investments to turn over in 1 year or 2 years. And that's what commercial banks in Nigeria want. So, but I think it's changing because we've seen some investment banks in Nigeria that are now investing in the renewable energy sector 5-7 years before they get their return on investment. So the commercial banks need to do is actually to change their lending model for this renewable energy sector. And then the other thing I wanted to say is at no point have I said we need to eradicate fossil fuel. I'm just saying that there are risks to continue to continue to use it and to generate electricity because of our carbon emission. But fossil fuels, they will always be around. It's just that for all of the other places that don't have grid parity, we can actually use off-grid solar to electrify them instead of waiting for the day that the grid will come.
thank you so much, ma. Thank you, ma.
Thank you very much for the insights you've just shared. And I want to believe that, Joy, you found that very useful. And to each and everyone on this call, I want to believe that you found every of the session today very useful. On behalf of the leadership of SDSN Nigeria, we want to appreciate our esteemed facilitator and special guest for today's occasion. We sincerely appreciate you. Just type Moses, you can get to type our name on, hopefully the program team will also share that on the community, our LinkedIn account, so that you can engage with them further on LinkedIn. I know they both are amazing people that even right from their account, you can learn 1 or 2 things and getting to study what they do. I once again want to say thank you, and maybe I should also use this as an extension to the Conference of Youth on Environment and Climate, which is coming up in the month of June. We look forward to engaging with you further on that, engaging with your organization further on that as well. And I want to believe it's been a great value. Yeah, madam, if you want to say something, I saw your mic.
No, I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we sincerely appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I want to believe it's been a great value for our time, and I'm trying as much as possible for each and every one of you to leave this call in the next 5 minutes. Definitely, I know you are seeing me today. It's been a very long time that we've met on this program, and I want to believe that every session has been so impactful for you. So that being said, those of us that are asking for attendance, please be your brother's keeper. Kindly share the attendance again. And regarding climate sensitization and education, we want to believe each and every one of you are doing the necessary thing. So I'm just going to share my screen and just to bring you up to speed as regards 1 or 2 activities regarding this, regarding the program. Just in a minute while you get to see my screen. Okay, I want to believe you can see my screen now. And currently we are still running our masterclass training sessions, which started last month and is going to end next week. Officially, it's going to end next week. I want to admonish each and every one of you, even if you miss any of the session, please go back and go and watch the session again. And even though you participated in the session, please go back and go and watch it again. I think there are so many times I've done a lot of courses or a lot of sessions on green energy, but anytime we have someone like Oluwaseyi, I know it's always a refresher course for me. So, but I want to admonish each and every one of you, try as much as possible to listen to those sessions over and over and over again. More importantly, you're going to be having your assessment 28th of March, which is going to be the date and, the time is going to be communicated to you by the programs team. Keep it up. 29th of March. Training ends 28th of March officially. But my mission here this evening is regarding the sensitization and research, which is a phase 2, and what we are proceeding to in the month of April. The month of April is here already. It's just a few days from here. And the very first thing you have is the climate education and sensitization. We want to believe that each and every one of you have been able to submit your reports. If you've not done that, kindly ensure you do complete that before the due date. The due date is 25th of March, and it's only those who complete the report that are going to be able to get approval or the necessary information that needs to be, that you need to know about. And another key area is the phase 2. There are 2 activities that are designed to be state-based activities. And the very first one is the climate research and workshop. And also the second one is a climate community-based impact project. But for the sake of timeline and I mean, the schedule we have for this program, there are some key aspects of this program which we get to prioritize the more, and we are giving more focus to, like this masterclass session and also the climate innovation bootcamp, which is going to be coming up 3rd of May. And it's likely it's also extended to 2 days, not just a day. But that being said, for phase 2, the community-based impact project is not going to be holding again, and also considering the statistics of different states which we have currently to ensure that no one is being left behind. So the primary focus for phase 2 is going to be the climate education and sensitization, which is an individual activity. And the second one is the climate research, policy, and workshop. So now I'm going to explain that for each and every one that are on this program, you are going to be grouped into 7 thematic focal area. And there are some of those areas focus on renewable energy, just like you've had. Some focus on green buildings and construction. There's another area that is focused on circular economy and waste management. There's an area that focused on blue economy. And these are areas which we're going to be doing some extensive research to see what exists out there. And I mean, most especially in the developed world, and which you can also get to adopt, and you are presenting this as a recommendation, and you're also going to be having a workshop to present whatever you've come up with as a proposal, proposition paper. So more importantly, that's going to happen between 1st and 26th of April. And like I said, the community-based impact project is not going to hold for this cohort. And the next thing is going to be the climate innovation bootcamp. So for me to quickly recap again and mention some very quick steps, the very first thing is this evening, all things being equal, the project team are also trying to put their hands on deck to ensure that whereby you all get to join the specific WhatsApp committee which you belong to based on the thematic area you've been grouped to. You might be lucky, it might be an area of interest. You might be unlucky, it might not be an area of interest, but I want you to see it as an avenue for you to learn something new. So maybe you've been innovating for, I'm trying to look at maybe IoT, climate innovation, or climate, you have something related to climate tech, and they posted you were assigned to something related to green energy and maybe sustainable energy. So it's an avenue for you to learn something new. And group participation, it has to be very intensive, and it's been expected of you to ensure you participate across board. And when you get to your community, you are to meet with each other, get to know each other, and also appoint a team lead who is going to be representing you. And just for the period of April alone, it's just to coordinate things and to ensure that every other information are put in place. So there's a flow of the second phase of phase 2 of the program. And more importantly, please, I want to say this. You can see 2 dates for report submission. The first one is 20th of April, whereby you have to submit your climate education and sensitization activity. And the second one is your group report. Please, it's very, very important you submit your report as and when due. And we just don't want to ensure that no one that got into this program, maybe for one reason or the other, because you didn't submit reports, you couldn't complete the program. And there are more benefits which you are still going to, there are more things you are still going to learn. Let me use that word. There are more things which you are going to learn. And we are also very, 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 even while you're in the program, we are very committed to looking out for climate-related opportunities, grants, which you can get to also apply for and benefit from. And which I believe the project team have been doing in one way or the other. I think at this point, I just want to take one or two questions, and the very quickest way is for me to have the questions in the Q&A session or maybe in the comment section. So so you can just use the comment section. Don't bother about the Q&A session. I think I can capture every information that is going to be there. Yeah. Let me just see. Let me see. You fill the state confirmation twice, but yes, you've not been added to any. So the state confirmation, if you fill it twice, definitely the project team knows what to do, and they are going to sort each and every one of you and ensure that you belong to the right group. So how do we submit your proposal? These are lovely questions. I also find joy in answering. Please go back to the email that was sent to you. One of the things which you also are very intentional about in SDSN is each and every of our participants must take note of their email. This is a lot of information at once. If Oluwa, I've just mentioned two things. There's no lot of information, and what I'm also saying is right on this screen now. This is just phase 2 that I'm mentioning. So even though if I don't come here to say it, it's in the program guide that was given to you. And another place whereby you can get to have that information is via the email which you receive every week. So please, let's try as much as possible. And if you have any other question, I'm trying to see if there are other related questions that I might need to ask. Please, you're going to get the presentation slide. But beyond that, presentation slide, it goes beyond presentation slide. I think the best thing is just for you to go back to watch the video. So listen to those speakers once again, and you can even screenshot your presentation slide from the YouTube without playing the video. So that's another trick for you to get that. I'm unable to mark attendance from beginning. Today's zone open without, well, you feel today, ensure you feel for next week. So that's not going to, at least you have to. So if you have a very good assessment, then congratulations, moving to the, and so I think at this very point, I might have to wrap up this call. And yes, so I can see Manuel Ramon, the climate education program, can it be done online? Depending on what your proposal says. So if you say you want to do it online, if it's approved, congratulations. If it's not approved, congratulations. You still have to resubmit your proposal. But definitely, you need to be able to prove that this is the level of impact, or this is the level of sensitize, this is what is this is the expected outcome. So left to me, there are a lot of things which I have done across the 30 states in Nigeria, and I've never been physically there. So even across Africa, and I've never been in those countries before. So definitely the answer is yes, and you can decide to do a physical engagement. But more importantly, the bootcamp is a virtual activity. And like I said, please keep a tab on your email. There is no information you need that's not going to be shared with you at the right time. And I want to admonish each and every one of you, please try as much as possible to make the best of this moment. Connect with each other. The WhatsApp platforms are always open over the weekends for you to engage with each other and share learning. So like today, maybe or tomorrow, you can go on the WhatsApp and just share what is your own takeaway and from this session, and another person might find it very useful. So maybe we should make that a task. Maybe the first session and the second session you had today, just drop an highlight of what you learned, drop it on the WhatsApp group, and each and everyone can get to engage. So if you also have a question related to the session today, your co-actors can also get to answer that. All right, thank you, everyone. I wish you a very great weekend and successful one indeed. Enjoy the rest of your. Sorry, I want to respond to this, Emmanuel, and I think I'm going to refer you back to the opening ceremony. Go and watch the opening ceremony in detail. So, and once you've watched the opening ceremony, then you can come. If you still don't understand, if your question is still not answered, you can come back to me. You see my face on your WhatsApp. You can come back to me, and you can even come to the office. You're in Oyo State. I'm currently in Oyo State. I'll sit you down and tell you the answer. But please, I don't want us to miss out from any information whenever it's been shared. All what you're asking has been answered before. So please go back and go and listen to that. And I just don't want to say too much on that. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, dear climate actors. Bye for now.